Welcome to episode 191 of the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and this show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement that make it so great. This episode is brought to you by Velera, formerly PSCU Co-op Solutions, the nation's premier payments credit union service organization and an integrated financial technology solutions provider. Velera serves more than 4,000 financial institutions throughout North America, operating with velocity to help its clients keep pace with the rapid momentum of change and fuel growth in a new era of financial services. They also have a longtime partner and supporter of this show, so we thank them. Check them out in the show notes. Today, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm having a conversation with Leigh Brady. Leigh is the president and CEO of State Employees Credit Union in North Carolina. So with that, let's just jump right in. Welcome to the show, Leigh.
Thanks so much, Randy. Appreciate you having me.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. I know we've met before between DE things in the Carolinas, but never had like that big, deeper conversation. So we get to do it now and let everybody else listen. For those who don't know you, how about a little bit of background? Where did your career start? How'd you find your way to credit unions? I always like to say most of us didn't grow up as kids going, someday I want to work in a credit union. But then once we got here, we love it. And then what does that look like to where you are today as the CEO?
So contrary to most people, I started my career at State Employees Credit Union.
That's amazing.
And I've been here over 36 years. So undergraduate degrees from NC State, go Pack. All right. And I answered a blind newspaper ad, which is like totally, nobody even knows what those are now. So
we just had a planning session and me and another person about my age mentioned something. We send out the CUInsight jobs email on Sundays. And she was like, oh, like when the Sunday classifieds used to go out. I'm like, that's actually where it came from in my old mind. So, but okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. I had no clue. It's a blind ad. I had no clue what I was applying for. But it was an accounting technician job back in the day. So I ended up interviewing Mike Lord, who's a former CEO here. He's the one that hired me way back in 87. And so I swore I'd stay here 2 years. They didn't really pay a lot. I mean, when you think about it, some of my friends, they were making $3,000 and $4,000 more starting. And I thought, God, okay, I'm going to take this job because I need a job. Right? But I fell in love with the place and I fell in love with the mission of credit unions, what we do, why we do it. Incredibly important. And knew, my goodness, I think I can make a real difference here at this organization. And I was very, very blessed to be able to move around in the organization. And I always joke, I've been around in a really good way.
Right.
So I went from accounting and spent 7 years in audit and then did a stint in loan admin, starting a secondary marketing department. And then I did stints in communications and training on the consumer education side, our volunteer engagement program, oversight of our foundation, had HR under me. And then prior to CEO, I spent the last almost 2 years of that as a chief operating officer. So it was more like, what didn't I have?
So I'd love to ask you this because we do hear often in credit unions of that, like, teller to CEO or the first job to CEO in your case, but often it's at smaller credit unions. You're not a small credit union. So to get those different opportunities. So if somebody was starting at State Employees today, just got out of, college, were you always raising your hand?
Absolutely, I was. And we were just joking, had an exec team meeting earlier and we were talking about who's a millennial, who's a Gen Xer, baby boomer, and I'm the oldest Gen Xer, right?
We share the generation.
Think I'm a baby boomer, but I love change. I love it. And quite frankly, it was about me raising my hand. And when I give advice to somebody coming in to our organization or any organization, I'm like, look, making the grades in school is great. It's wonderful. But you got a clean slate when you start in any company or any credit union. And to me, there are two things that are really going to distinguish you. One of those is your work ethic, and how hard of a worker are you? And then the second thing is your adaptability to change. So, because, I mean, you and I both know
that is very Gen X of
I
you.
mean, it is. And, but you and I know that the financial services industry has changed drastically over the last 30 some odd years. And it still continues to change.
And always will, right? So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about credit unions. And I start with the challenge question, and because I prefer to spend more time on the joyous stuff. So we get that out of the way early. But when you think of credit unions overall, what are the biggest challenges that you see as us as a movement facing?
Okay, I've kind of spoken to this in a number of different meetings and our venues, but it is worrisome to me how we're viewed as a commodity now. But I remember back, let's say 20 years ago, when everybody, if you were a member of State Employees Credit Union or any credit union, you did all your business there. That's it. Now, it may be that they have shared term certificate with us. They may have their auto loan with us, but they may have their mortgage somewhere else. And they may have their money market somewhere else. And their rewards card is elsewhere. And, and I'll be honest, I mean, I'm guilty of that myself.
I was just going to say, I'm like, ooh, the rewards card, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Look, we've grown up in credit union land, and credit unions should be. Our mission is to help our members keep money in their pockets. And with everything else being equal, that's what we have to do, but it's resulted in us being a commodity now. Yeah. How do we discern and the difference in a credit union? It's becoming more difficult.
So what's your elevator pitch on how we do that?
People. I always talk about how our people are our secret sauce. When you look for a relationship, I'll just tell you, just look at share term certificate rates, right? And when obviously we get something that tells us who's given the best rate all around, hands down, we probably are always second. And we're second to Ally Bank. But I mean, Ally is this online entity. And you can't go walk in to Ally if you've got a problem. So I keep that's got to be the differentiator, the relationships, the community support that we provide as well. We're in all 100 North Carolina counties. We're very fortunate to be there. But there are some fabulous credit unions around. I know a lot of them in North and South Carolina. They do great work in the communities, and they're there for people.
No, couldn't agree more. A twofold question. What has you most excited about what you and your team are working on at State Employees? And what has you, I mean, again, that blimp level, what are you excited about our movement overall nationally?
Yeah, so at SECU, I'm very excited about the technology upgrades that we're doing. I'm honing in on selecting a core vendor.
Oh, boy.
Let me tell you, I know. So our core, the last one was put in 1983.
It's about time, for a little upgrade.
Yeah, it's due for an upgrade. And, obviously with technology changing, today, as a matter of fact, on our mobile app, we just rolled chat out for the first time. And we're doing a soft rollout, but all of these things that we're doing now, I mean, they have me super pumped about what is to come and what are the possibilities of things that we can provide for our members, things that members have been asking for a heck of a long time. So I'm super pumped about that. And then, not just for our members, but for our team members, because it's going to make it a heck of a lot more efficient for them to serve our members and make their lives so much easier. And then, we talk about the movement. And there's a lot of headwinds right now with the movement. So some of those that, I think about, like junk fees. All right, big deal. Fed funds, AI.
Yep.
All right. Inflation. And it is stubborn. So mergers, consolidations, all of that are coming along. Open banking. All right. What does that mean for the future? Right. So when I look at all those things that we're having to deal with, it still gets me excited about what we've got as a business model. All right. So everybody has to deal with all of this stuff. But behind that stuff, where I mentioned the people, there really, really is that excitement of what we can do for others. So, in terms of my kids, let's say, and my kids are Two of them are out of college, adulting, we call it, on their own, and last one is a senior in college. But what I see in them is a care for the community, probably a lot more than even me at that age. All right, there's that concern. So the model that we have, the model that we're building, if we can survive all these headwinds, it's a bright future for us. I really think.
I agree. That's for sure. In that first question, when you were kind of talking about your path to the CEO office, one of the questions I always love to ask about is mentors and those people that have, that you kind of look back on and you're like, oh, they really helped me along the way. And as you were talking about that, I'm just imagining that there had to be people. You were going into like new areas. It's not like that you were educated on formally in taking over these things as you did raise your hand to really learn the whole credit union. Were there people or along the way, whether formal or informal, that you viewed as mentors that helped you out? And now, as somebody, you mentioned the years of service you have, behind you, and you are a CEO of one of the largest credit unions in the world. How do you, I guess, give back that experience besides coming on a podcast like mine?
Yeah, that's a great question because, look, I worked for 3 different CEOs already. I mean, that's kind of unusual, right? And let me tell you, I learned from each one of them. Maybe some good things, maybe some not so good things, all right? But it doesn't, that stuff really, I mean, you take all that, you absorb all that, you learn from all of that. And then, quite frankly, learning from some of my peers as well, whether they're at my credit union or they're at other credit unions in the industry. It's been incredibly helpful for me to establish relationships along the way. And when you talk about me raising my hand to say I would do something, for some of the CEOs I worked for, sometimes it's them taking a chance that I could do something. I remember when I was asked to start our secondary marketing department. I was in audit at the time. I was very comfortable. I had 2 of my 3 kids. I've always joked that audit's the best job because you tell everybody else what they're doing wrong. They don't tell you.
They don't tell you.
Wrong, right? It's perfect. So when they asked me to start that, and I had my elevator speech as in, you don't want me. Because I was happy. And I said, I've never made a mortgage loan in my life. I don't really think you want me to be the one starting that department. But the response was funny because the response was, we're not asking you to make a mortgage loan. We're asking you to sell mortgage loans. And wanted it figured out in 6 weeks. And wow. So I'm like, okay. And so, how do I say no? All right. Because it's something different. And so that is on me as a CEO now to make sure that I've got that mindset of taking somebody and putting them into a space that they're just not familiar with at all. And, it's figuring out, let's see, what do people want to do? Because not everybody even wants to be a CEO, right? But figuring out who wants to do that and giving them the opportunity to garner the skill sets. I think Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Unions, they've always done a really, really good job of job swapping, right, at the exec level. I'm not positive we're going to be great about that because we got so many big projects going right now. But we are working on the job shadowing piece of it because I am adamant, our exec team meeting every week, I'm adamant about them all being involved in everything from the financial and the budgeting side of it. I mean, you might be in charge of all the administrative type tasks, but you need to know about the dollars and cents of this organization and down to, peer comparisons and how do you pull that or what's a 5300 report? And you need all that stuff, right? And I've been very open with my board in this. I said, a big part to me of my job is preparing someone else or multiple people here to be sitting in this seat right now.
The best scenario, right? Like to have the board have multiple internal choices that can just step right in.
That's
right?
Exactly what I want. Exactly.
I'm going to skip ahead a question here just because of what you were talking about. We were talking about your leadership team and talking about building the people up. If we go all the way back, if you were adding to your leadership team, is there a certain quality in people that you're looking for? Like when you're, whether it's promoting somebody in or bringing somebody from the outside for that matter. And then on the flip side of it, is there something you see or hear where you're just like, that's not going to work here.
When I first took this role, I did make some changes, all right? But I think that overall, the folks that I'm looking for are servant leaders first. And when I say that, I want to make sure that I qualify that. I want someone who is going to put all of their people before themselves, put this organization before themselves, because quite frankly, it is not about me. It is not about any of them, but it is about this organization and the people that work hard for this organization. And so they've got to have that mentality. And then I want this really, really high level of trust. All right. We have to know on that executive team that we have each other's backs. I also look for things like maturity, because I think that carries someone a long way. When I say maturity, it's not just as a personality, but it's more of the, I've been through certain situations before, and maybe I know how to handle some things. So those are things that are top for me.
Anything that just turns you off instantly when you hear it in an interview or something like that?
Yeah. So the I. Yeah.
If I had to say, after 180 some odd episodes of credit union CEOs, right, the number one answer, if we were playing Family Feud, is always I, which doesn't surprise me because of our cooperative nature.
That's right. You got it.
A little bit more about your network. It's this interesting thing. And I remember now that we're at the age that we're at, not only have you become a CEO, more friends have become CEOs. When you're in your 30s, there aren't a whole bunch of CEOs out there that you're hanging out with. And one of the things that kind of, I don't want to say surprised me, but just having the conversation with people was like, you're tight with your team. You might be tight with your board, but you're still right there in between the two. Like there is that, you go from, even if like you talked about being the COO, you had one boss. Now you have a bunch more. Who do you, like from a network standpoint, surround yourself with? Or do you have people that you can bounce things off of that maybe are in similar positions? And do you have that person who just is like, what are you thinking? That's crazy. Or tell me more. Like that, where they don't have the vested interest or whatever it happens to be, that you're like, what do you think about this?
My number one person is probably going to be my husband. Obviously, he's been with me good and bad. Been married about 32 years almost now. And he is my best friend and somebody who will be brutally honest with me, good or bad. All right. And, so there are quite a number of situations that I might encounter that I might bounce some ideas off of him. But then there's some things that I can't. Right. Yeah. I mean, there are things that are definitely critical items that maybe need to stay here at SECU. And I'm very fortunate that I have a network of individuals here. Most are on my exec team that I will be going to bounce those ideas off, that will give me their honest opinion. And then, on the board, our board chair, and I have a really, really good relationship. And I think there's several on our board too that, they're always going to give me that valuable feedback and say, you need to think about this. You need to think about that. And then there are credit union CEOs around the country that have been so welcoming to me. Some that I have known for years, but just never in this capacity. And they have been quick to, if you need a listening ear, or if you need a virtual happy hour after hours, be sure to call, and we'll get on a Zoom call or whatever it might be and lament, let's say, or guide each other. So the network is really incredible, and I'm very, very blessed to have a lot of people to turn to.
That's fantastic. I love that. One of the things I like about the podcast is I get to ask these questions that are kind of scratch my own itch. I'm like, hopefully everybody else is interested too. But a few years ago on a podcast, I heard this question asked, and I absolutely loved it. It was, what's the greatest investment that you've made in your career? And I always give the example of the Warren Buffett said it was Dale Carnegie courses. Nothing to do with investments, right? If you think back over your career, is there an investment or something that you did that you're like, probably wouldn't be where I was today without it?
Yeah, for me, I think it was getting my MBA early on. Let me just tell you, and I'm married to a CPA. My undergraduate degree is in accounting. And I mean, we're not like the life of the party all the time. We're just not. So,
but you could tell us how much the party costs. So, I mean, it's
exactly.
and if it went over budget.
Per person.
Right, you can break it all down.
Right. But I will tell you, the MBA, it kind of pushed me out of my boundaries a little bit to maybe learn some things outside of accounting and econ and statistics. And those things were, like marketing and, all of these, all the public speaking that you had to do in the group projects because you had to work closely with other people. And I've always said, I think that probably in and of itself made me a lifelong learner too. So, in terms of things like I've had several insurance licenses that I got after that. And I've always just thought, okay, I'm not going to be in this little box forever and say, this is all I need to know. Because if I do that, then I'm almost closing myself off to opportunities that exist out there. And look, I will say, I am not the smartest thing at State Employees Credit Union. I admit it. I'm not. But I will tell you that new opportunities that I think that I've been able to embrace now because of getting outside that box, they've paid off for me.
Scratch my own itch question again. This is kind of just listening to you there and thinking about something that you said earlier. And I tend to be like this as well, as like I enjoy change. I find it exciting. But as a leader, most people aren't excited about change necessarily. And to some, it can make them uncomfortable. How, as somebody who's like, isn't this the greatest thing of all time? Do you bring everybody along that may have different personalities than, say, you or I do?
From the very, very beginning of taking this job, I said, I will never make everybody happy. Never. We have in total, when you count all of our full-time, contract, part-time, we have 8,300 people. And it's a lot of people. I will never make everybody happy. Some things that we've implemented have not been the greatest for some that are out there. And then for others, it's like, this is wonderful. All right. So I've come to the mindset that you shouldn't really concern yourselves with those that are in the phrase here. You need to concentrate on what it might be the 80% in the middle of all of this. And when you've got that 80% in the middle and you are speaking and you are resonating and you are moving along in the organization based upon changes that have been made, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
That's a great life lesson for even outside of credit unions. We're in an election year. So let's just focus on the 80% in the middle. That would be delightful. Another question that I've added, I've kind of tweaked it a little bit this year. And, because I was thinking back, I'm a reader, and I was thinking back to some of the old leadership books and management books from like early on in the career. And some have not aged that great. Others, have. Like today, 2024, what do you think makes a great CEO or a great leader in general?
Going back to the servant leader, I think that people who consistently put others before themselves, I think is extremely important. But outside of that, personally, I think a CEO needs to be very relatable. They need to be able to have a conversation with, look, every night I'm sitting at my desk and, I work late. And Lorena, who cleans up in the evenings for us, and sometimes she brings her daughter Jennifer, and Lorena and Jennifer and we have this little bond, and Jennifer aspires to be a doctor one day, and so I'm having this fruitful conversation with Lorena, and then having a fruitful conversation with another credit union CEO or a frontline teller. It's extremely important, and being there for people. We had a over 20-year employee pass away a couple of weeks ago. So it was about, an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes. And I didn't really know her. But in my mind, I was like, gosh, somebody who invested over 20 years of their life here, serving members, they deserve the respect for me to show up for their credit union family and for their immediate family. And I did. And I underestimated how much that would mean to all of our team members in that area. And one of our exec team members said that the SVP in the area called and they said it meant a lot for her to go. But what was impressive, well, it wasn't our CEO that showed up. Leigh came too.
Yeah.
And I think a CEO needs to realize that they're not above everybody else. They're the family too. And it makes a difference these days. It really does.
That's beautiful. Just because of time and me looking at so many more questions I want to ask you, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. But again, you're on a big ship. So turning that ship can be, as anything grows, it becomes a little bit more difficult to make changes, to move fast, to pivot. So the two questions I'm kind of combining it, like the one is like, how do you make sure that you're still taking risks and you're still innovating? And on the flip side, something I've struggled with for years, I wish I could say I'm getting better at it. Hopefully I'm a little bit. And once you set your mind to something, if you start to realize it's not working, how do you stop? Like even being as large of a credit union as you are, we don't have unlimited resources. How we spend our time, our money, our energy, all of that is limited. So if something isn't working, how do you get out of it before you just keep throwing good after the bad?
So in terms of taking risks, like I've always said, listen to what members are saying to you. And sometimes it's not so much that you're innovating with a new product or something and taking a risk on that. But sometimes it's taking a risk fine-tuning what product you have already based upon the feedback of members. We introduced tiered-based pricing for the very first time in our organization last year, which some folks might say, oh my God, all right.
I think some would be surprised because you didn't know that.
And so we started just with auto loans, right? And that was like in March of 23. And then we implemented the rest of the consumer side in November. And what we kept hearing was folks wanted, and our board really wanted to kind of compress our tiers. We started with 5 tiers. In April of this year, we moved to 3. So an A gets an A rate, a B gets a B, and a C goes to a C, D, and E, or no score. It's a great deal. But when you're listening to members, what we heard and the reason that we moved to that was our A folks, they weren't borrowing from us. Our B folks weren't borrowing from us. Yeah. And they're like, you make it attractive and we'll come back. Okay. And you need them. You need this really good from the risk standpoint in your portfolio. You need to make that change. So that's where I'm saying change based upon what the member wants. And look, if you make a change and it's not working out, just bite the bullet and just pull it. So, it is obviously some things you can't do that to, right? On a conversion, I'm going like, we're going to have to figure out on the core conversion how to make that thing work, right? But look, there are some things that we put in at our organization that have kind of been duds. There are. We implemented travel services years ago, and it was, I think, maybe the month before 9/11 went way down. There have been some other things along the way. Just say, it's okay. It's okay to fail, but you got to keep trying.
Absolutely. You mentioned the 8,000 employees. What does a career in credit unions look like to you? You and I were around pre-COVID. Most financial institutions, it wasn't just credit unions, was like, there's no such thing as remote work. And then since, like you mentioned, you have your youngest is a senior in college right now. A year from now, graduating, wanted to work in credit unions. What does that career look like maybe even 5 or 10 years from now in your mind?
Well, you're going to make me get on the remote thing, daggone you.
No, we don't have to. It's just overall career is really the interest. So.
There are more opportunities in a credit union now than there ever were. Okay. And clearly the remote work has changed some things, right? But technology teaming up with that has really caused that to happen. And there will always be some in-person. This is the job. You're dealing with members, and whether you're dealing with them through an ITM or an ETM, whether you're dealing with them in a branch, there is some face-to-face type stuff that has to happen. Okay, but then there are a lot of jobs that you can do from sitting at home. And my stance on that has kind of been go with your passion. and everybody here kind of made fun of me for a while there when I said, you need to do what you're passionate about. So if you don't like working with the public, I don't want you working in finance, right? And somewhere we can find somewhere back office for you to bring value to this organization. So I go back to telling folks, follow your passion. Number one, you spend the majority of your waking hours at your job. That's just how life is. You need to be doing something you love and be doing something that you enjoy who you work with. And if that's yourself, then that's okay too. But it takes a lot to be successful.
I'm kind of combining a couple things that you've said here, but I mean, talking about the younger generation being so mission-based, we happen to be mission-based financial institutions. How do we attract that, the best of that group to be like, I'd like to make a career in credit unions? We know we're not Amazon, right? But are we more like REI or something? I mean, just, like...
Okay, so here's an example. Our foundation is, this year we're celebrating 20 years, $258 million, $250 million, all right?
This is amazing.
Has been given to North Carolina communities, all right? One of those programs is, it's called LEAD for North Carolina and through the UNC School of Government, and they have different cohorts every year. And this one example, all right, there are two girls that I met at one of the receptions for that LEAD for North Carolina. And I kind of just took them under my wing, all right? I've mentored them along the way as they've done different things in their careers. And one of them is in law school now. And she applied and was accepted into an intern position in our legal services group. It's instances just like that I think it's not just me doing it, it's replicated over and over and over again throughout our entire state, where you make it appealing because of what you do. You talked about the mission, right? It's appealing because of what we do. We bring folks in, and I always want to make sure that we are also an inclusive organization too. So that family aspect of it, make sure that you have that in your culture where you're going to take care of each other, right? And then if they find the work appealing, the organization appealing, the culture appealing, there's a good chance that they might want to participate in something like that to see if it's a good fit.
You've talked about your employees. You've talked about the members a lot in your community. Now we're talking about as well, you're the leader of a cooperative financial institution. With that comes a lot of influence on the lives of others. Also the ability to empower others. I guess, what does that mean to you at Leigh, both internally and externally?
I can tell you, I probably underestimated what it meant when I took this job. But I have come to realize that I have the ability that's been given to me to influence a heck of a lot of people. And maybe, just maybe, it might be the ability to help influence what goals they want to accomplish or how they treat other people, right? Based upon maybe from the mentor side of what they see and try to mimic that, because some people do that as well. But I've been given that opportunity from the professional standpoint. And then even down to a service club that I'm in, from the personal standpoint too, where people are just looking up to me. And I'm like, look, I'm just Leigh. I'm still the same person. I still go by McDonald's drive-thru every morning and get my large Diet Coke every morning. I mean, that's me, right? But I will do my very best to represent our cooperative and to represent the industry. And then as a female leader, on top of that, represent that female leadership aspect of it to the best of my ability and see where it goes. I'm trying not to screw it up, Randy.
It seems like you're doing a good job. So I love that. Before we have a little bit of fun and wrap this thing up with some rapid fire questions, was there anything that you hoped I was going to ask you about or that you wanted to talk about on the show today?
I was hoping you let me ask you questions.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Oh, I really prefer to be on this side. I realize
bet
that.
You do.
I have so much fun with this, and the times that I've been on other people's podcasts, I'm like, oh, geez, that's not fun.
No, I'm serious because you talk to a lot of people. You had asked me what I thought was the biggest issue in credit unions right now. I wanted to ask you the same thing. I mean, what in general are people saying? Because maybe I'm totally off the mark.
I don't think you are. I think a lot of the things that you hit on are the same things everybody's feeling. I feel like, two that keep coming back up in different ways of saying them. One is regulation. And it really depends on where you're at. Like if you're a smaller credit union, it's making it very tough to survive. It's burdensome. You've not been around a while. There are a whole lot less credit unions. So that's one side of it. People. I mean, a lot's changed even since COVID, just on people. And so that, never like the word war for talent, but just that idea of like creating you mentioned an inclusive workplace and making sure that family atmosphere. And it's an interesting thing, right? Like people seem to not be staying in positions as long sometimes. And so.
I know it's funny while I said, I swore I'd only be here 2 years. In fact, my mom, this was back in the days where your permanent address and phone number was still your parents.
Absolutely.
You weren't sure where you're going to be. That was on your resume. And some nice company in our Research Triangle, chemical company, had called at my home in Wilson, my parents' home, and said they wanted to interview me. And I knew that company would have paid a lot more than the credit union. And so my mom says, oh, she's already got a job.
Oh, she was shutting it down. She wanted you to stay at the credit union.
What did you do?
That's funny. She's like, get your own phone.
But how lucky am I that she did that? You know what?
Isn't that amazing? I swear so many of us, whether stumbled into this and we just don't leave, right? And don't want to. So. It's a beautiful thing that I think a lot of people outside of credit unions don't really understand it. But whatever that secret sauce is, it's a beautiful thing. So, all right, we're going to have a little fun with the rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid, but your answers don't have to be. So what was the very first job you ever had? Never made a buck at?
That would have been babysitting for sure. But right after that, I worked at Tasty Freeze in high school for 2.5 years. And let me tell you, I can just make the best soft serve.
I was just going to say the soft serve.
Little thing on the top. It is pronto. I love it.
We had one of the little weekend festivals here a couple of weeks ago, and there was one of the, the circus type food trucks or whatever, and they had a swirl soft serve, and I'm like, I want one of those. So
good. So good.
Yeah. Amazing. When was the last time, either personally or professionally, you found yourself amazed?
I'll probably get a little tenderhearted on this, but it was probably last Sunday. My dad is still living. My mom is not, but my dad is. He's 92 years old. And let me just tell you, his mind is a heck of a lot sharper than mine. He remembers, he can tell you what date he had his flu vaccine last year. I mean, that's how he was a CPA. And I mean, numbers are his thing, let me tell you. But his mobility, he's had some issues because of a stroke and things like that. And for somebody who is really unable to care for himself completely now, he just has such a positive attitude. It amazes me. Somebody that he is, let me just tell you, impacted so many people in his life. I mean, he's given back to the community in such a big way, in so many ways. And people all the time just say, how much he's done for everyone else. But he's just so positive. And, he really is an inspiration. And everybody needs somebody like that in their life to say, look, it can always be worse for you, but you need to be amazing for other people.
I love that. Is there anything taking up the personal growth space that you're working on?
Well, let's see. I need to get in shape. Good Lord. I mean, when I say people spend the majority of their waking hours, I spend too many waking hours at my job and sitting at a desk. And so I've got to make that a priority at some point.
To get moving. Yeah, we can fall into that. That's for sure.
Yep, get moving.
I understand that all too well. You just talked about how much time you spend at work. And one of the things I found in myself and in others who have kind of made it to that leadership position is leading organizations can take a lot of time. often to the detriment of some other relationships. So have you picked up anything along the way that you could share with us on how to make sure? You mentioned your husband, that we're still having it all.
I can tell you that you have to be intentional about what you do in your life and the relationships that you maintain in your life. I mentioned my husband's a CPA. He's been his own firm for a while now. And tax season is a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. And the coming home at 1 a.m, we go weeks where I talk to him at 6 a.m. I talk to him maybe when he climbs in bed at 1 a.m, and that might be about it, right? But then after tax season, we've always been intentional about spending some time together because you have to reconnect with people. You have to maintain those relationships with your loved ones and your friends. Those mean a lot to you. And I do joke sometimes. I'm like, nobody's gonna ever say, "Oh my God, I need to spend more time at the credit union." Nobody's gonna say that. No. But somebody will say, "Gosh, I need to spend more time with this person or that person," and so figure out a way to be there for people.
I like that. What's the best piece of advice you ever received? Do you remember who gave it to you?
Yeah, I quote it all the time. It was my mom, and my mom started this when I was starting to babysit. In which case, I will tell you now, people can earn a lot of money babysitting. Leigh Brady earned $1.50 to take care of 3 kids. and my mom instilled in me the need to do the dishes. If there were clothes that needed to be folded, you don't leave any kind of home where there are toys around. So that house, when those folks got home, that was clean. Their kitchen was clean, all for $1.50 an hour. And the kids, are in bed. But it really is leaving a place better than you found it. That is kind of carried me through a lot of things in life, and even down to, volunteering. I remember at church, when other people will walk out and there's stuff that needs to be picked up and thrown away and dishes that need to be done, maybe at a covered dish dinner. And so I'm going to be the one that's going to be pitching in. And it definitely comes from my mom.
This question came from NCUA Chairman Harper. Who plays you in the movie biopic of your life?
Love that.
He's a listener of the podcast. I saw him. He was like, "You should ask this." I'm like, "That's fantastic. I will."
So I'll be a little self-deprecating and then a bit aspirational on this. Okay. So I'm going to do a combo of people here. Julia Roberts. That's the aspirational. And Lily Tomlin.
That would be an amazing combination. So I love that.
I don't know if you remember like Julia Roberts, the Aaron Brockovich type stuff. It's like a go get 'em. and then the Lily Tomlin, because you just can't take things seriously all the time. And you've got to laugh with others and at yourself. And so a combo of the two of those would be awesome.
That might be my favorite answer to that question. I've been asking it for about a year and a half now. Or is there a book that either you've gifted others or you think everybody should read?
Just maybe an old one, but I have given it to others before. And it's a short book. So on being the exception. I'm not even positive I remember the author now. But it covers 7 different ways you can go in life about being an exception in life. It was, I remember, very good advice to be followed. A quick, easy read. Annie somebody.
We can
Sorry.
Find it, so.
No worries. Look that up. But yeah, anything you can do from the self-improvement side. Every CEO and every credit union person, when you read stuff, you're reading, and it's about the organization, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's helpful to just have a little time to read something for yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I didn't mean to skip this, but I did. What's the greatest album of all time? That one you could listen to from front to back.
The Eagles. Hotel California is by far. Yeah.
That's the one.
I love the Eagles. Those are the ones where I know the words.
Yeah, I get it. Last question on this. When you hear the word success, who's the first person who comes to mind and why?
I'll go back to my dad on that. My dad, he was a CPA, a very successful business, gave back to his church, his community. He has a student center at the community college named after him. There at the community college, started a scholarship at Barton College, another college in their area as well. The Kiwanis Club gave back from the service side of things and took care of our family. I mean, there were 3 kids in our family. And when I was in ninth grade, so my mom got very sick. And let me tell you, I mean, a rock. That man was a rock. And sometimes, Randy, success in life, it's not all about corporate. It's just about how you live your life.
That's the reason I love that question. We all define it differently, right?
But, I think that the one thing, even though he's very successful in business, he didn't ever rest on his laurels with that business success. So he just gave back in a variety of ways and just demonstrated how blessed he had been. So, I just would love to emulate that in my life.
Well done, Dad. That's it. Before we wrap this up completely, I just want to say thank you very much for being on the show. I've so enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure others will too. If people have questions for you, what's your poison? Email, LinkedIn? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn is going to be the easiest way. I hate to say that because my email box is a nightmare.
I understand that too. We'll link to that as well. I look forward to our paths crossing soon, and thank you again for spending time with me today.
Well, thank you, and appreciate everything that you're doing in the industry and helping to get the word out about the good things going in credit unions and maybe the things that we do need to think about and ponder, right?
All right. Thank you for the kind words. We will link to everything we talked about today in the show notes. So thank you again for being here today. A few things before we go. Please make sure to check out our sponsor, Velera, in the show notes. Velera is the nation's premier payments credit union service organization and financial technology solutions provider. They're also a longtime supporter of the show and allowing me to have this much fun doing what I do. So please stop by and check them out. Please also subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We're on them all. And if you're looking for a book like the one mentioned today, a quick Google of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and you can have it on its way from Amazon. Last but certainly not least, thank you all for listening. Y'all rock. I appreciate each and every one of you for letting me have this much fun. Be well, friends.